All right, guys, so it's been a couple of days, but we are here at Jordan Performance and Racing. As you remember from the beginning of the video, we spent the first week or two of the development process of really just dialing in all of the other aspects of the tune that make this a great tune, not just the wide open throttle power increases. So now is the time that we're going to test the wide open throttle. This is where we're going to measure the power on the dyno, and we're going to see kind of where we land with everything. So as it is right now, we've spent a lot of time getting this thing really driving well. Transmission is shifting awesome. Shift scheduling is great. We've got some better efficiency from the torque converter. We're definitely making a little more power at part throttle as well. I suspect that we're going to make a little more power at wide open throttle as well. However, as we alluded to in the original Omega Tune video, these engines seem to not handle quite as much ignition timing as the previous generation engines. My guess is that's likely because we have a slightly different design in the cylinder head. It's probably a little bit more efficient or more efficient combustion chamber. When you have either of those variables, you tend to not be able to be quite as aggressive with the ignition timing when you are octane limited. So, that being said, Whipple did a really good job with these stock tunes on these trucks, and they do make decent power. So while I think we're definitely going to make a little extra power, I don't think that it's going to be a huge increase versus what the Whipple tune is going to make on 93 octane. However, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the wide open throttle increases are just a small part of what makes a good tune a good tune. So after we test the stock tune on 93 octane, the Whipple 93 tune on 93 octane, we're going to load our Oz tuning tune, test that as well on 93 octane, and then our buddies over here at Griptec have sent us a couple of pulleys that we're going to play with. So we're going to start with this 3.75 pulley. That's one step smaller than what's currently on the supercharger, which is a 3.875. I think that this is going to be a nice upgrade for trucks that are running 93 octane. We can add just a little bit more boost and get a little extra performance out of it without breaking the bank and without really taxing the engine or putting it into the danger zone. So that's the plan with this pulley. We're going to see what it makes on our 93 octane tune and see if those power increases are worth the expense of the pulley and, you know, increasing that risk factor just a little bit. Then we're going to also test the truck on E85. We have our JD Performance Solutions fuel system installed. It's running awesome. We've got everything dialed in so our fuel pressures are super consistent. And we're going to test on the 3.875 pulley on E85, the 3.75 pulley as well, and then we're going to move down to the bad boy here, this 3.5 pulley as well. Anybody that's ever had any of their trucks tuned with us or Whipple tunes know that the 3.5 pulley is kind of my go-to pulley. For trucks that are being driven on the street every day, running on E85 that you're maybe going to do some towing with, etc. This is my go-to pulley. I like this pulley for several reasons. One, because it still leaves the blower well inside of its efficiency range, so we don't have to worry too terribly much about air charge temps getting too high. It provides a great return on performance, especially when we're on E85, because this pulley is way too aggressive to run it on pump gas. So E85, even E30, E50, if you don't have quite E85 available and you've got to do mixing, it still works really well with this pulley. It's just too much for 91 or 93 octane. And it also doesn't put things on the ragged edge. And, you know, yes, you can run a smaller pulley. Yes, guys are running smaller pulleys. Guys run 3.25s, 3.0s, 2.75s, 20 over crank pulleys with a 3.0. So, I mean, yes, you can run more boost. Yes, you can run a more aggressive pulley. If you are racing and this is a race application only and you're not concerned with reliability or longevity and you're not using this truck every day, it's a great option. And then we can absolutely handle that for you. We can tune it for you. There's no problem there. However, if you're using your truck like a truck and you want it to last and you want it to be reliable, in my opinion, this is the go-to pulley. So we're going to see what power numbers we get out of this. I'm hoping for somewhere in the mid 700s range or somewhere around there on the 3.5 pulley. But it's a very, very hot day today here in Central Florida. As you can tell, I'm pretty sweaty already. So that is going to affect our power numbers, so keep that in mind. However, since we are doing all of this testing on the same day, without any changes, without even taking the truck off of the dyno, the actual power numbers are not really the important part of this process. What we're trying to illustrate here are the gains, or the percentage gains. So example, we made 500 horsepower on the stock tune and we made 550 horsepower on our 93 tune. Well, that's a 10% increase in power. So those are what we want to actually look at. So when you see these dyno graphs at the end of through the video and at the end of the video, keep that in mind, right? We're not comparing, oh, well, such and such tuner made 600 horsepower and you made 575 horsepower. That's not really what's relevant. What's relevant here is the percentage gains, and anybody that's not showing you the baseline of where they started at and then what the difference is or the power numbers from their changes, that's a little bit of a kind of a smoke and mirrors dance, and we don't do that here, of course. So you're going to see baseline on 93, stock pulley, everything, and then we're going to progress from there, and you're going to have all of that data so that you can analyze, you can look at it, and tell the gains that we make from each step of this process. So we've got a bunch of work to do today, so we're going to get started on it. We'll keep you guys along for the ride throughout the process. So we're pretty excited. I hope you guys are ready, so we're going to get going, all right? All right, guys, so we have just wrapped up the 93 octane testing. So we have got the results for the Whipple stock tune on 93 octane and the Oz tuning tune. Kind of surprised myself, actually. So as you can see, Whipple tune made 525.94, we'll call it 526, at 6,730 RPM, we'll call it 6,750. Max torque, 495.80, we'll call it 495 at 3,420. So Oz Tuning Tune, max power 565 horsepower at 7,250 RPM, max torque 501 at 4,700. As you can see, we've got gains of roughly 30 pound-feet and 30 horsepower all the way through the curve. And then down here at the end, you kind of see in the Whipple tune, there's this kind of torque bump here at the beginning. That's because of the torque converter logic they use in their tune. The converter actually unlocks right there on tip in and then locks back up here through the pool. So this is kind of an artificial increase in torque. When you're actually driving the truck on the street, it's actually going to be a little more linear like this. So kind of ignore that. Our torque converter logic keeps the converter locked on tip in, so that's why we see the difference there. But all in all, really good. You can notice the actual curve itself has a little bit of a different shape. That's largely in part to our cam timing that we use with these blowers. We're actually able to see a little bit less boost and make more power. And as we know, boost is a measurement of resistance. So if we're making more power and seeing less boost, that means the engine is breathing better and we're getting better performance. So win-win. So everything's looking good so far. We're gonna get some E85 in this thing. We're gonna do some pulls on E85 and start swapping pulleys out. So you guys stay tuned. All right, guys, it's been a long day. Wow. Whole bunch of dyno pulls, whole bunch of work later, we have all the results. So pretty exciting stuff. We already showed you guys the 93 octane numbers, so now we're gonna talk about E85. Again, we're running our JD Performance Solutions fuel system, and we are still on the stock Whipple injectors as well. So if you push it further than what we pushed it today, probably gonna need to upgrade the injectors, but as we're standing right now, good to go, no issues whatsoever. So, starting with our 93 octane numbers that we just went through, 525 on the Whipple tune, 565 on the Oz tune, and this is stock pulley 3.875, didn't change anything, no extra boost or anything like that. This is just E85. So from 565 wheel horsepower 93 to 645 wheel horsepower. Hot dog. That is a heck of a gain. Now the cool thing about this is that although we've got our big fuel system and everything else, we can get these same power gains from as little as E30. So what we will be offering for you guys that don't want to necessarily do the fuel system right away, we can do an E30 tune using the completely stock fuel system for you guys. So you're going to be able to make that power and you don't even need a fuel system upgrade. So these engines, like I mentioned earlier, they're pretty octane limited. So super efficient cylinder heads. The camshafts are already a little less aggressive, as we're seeing that as well here. but throwing that extra octane in there and removing the octane limitation from the engine really lets these things breathe and lets them shine. So, I mean, the gains speak for themselves. You can see we've got gains all the way through the curve. I'm actually going to turn off the stock Whipple file for now, just to kind of clean things up a little bit, so bear with me. So just versus Oz 93 octane versus Oz on E85, or this could be E30 as well. So here we're 545 pound-feet of torque versus 500, so nearly 50 pound-feet of torque at 4,000 RPMs. Even at, you know, down at 3,500 RPMs, we've got big gains as well. Through the mid-range, even bigger gains. This is where peak torque is where we've got peak cylinder pressure, so that's where it was going to be more octane limited previously on 93 octane. Here we don't have those limitations anymore. 546 versus 495, so we got nice big gains there. Up at the top, gains keep on coming. 563 wheel horsepower on 93, 638. I mean, that kind of speaks for itself. So these things love octane, 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 octane. So next step. So we did try our 3.75 pulley on 93 octane. Unfortunately, I think that's just going to be a little bit too aggressive for 93 octane with these engines being so octane limited. I'm sure there are going to be guys that are going to run it. It's not something that I would recommend to our customers because you're really kind of running on the ragged edge at that point. And, you know, it only takes, you know, maybe you're a little past your oil change, or maybe your plug gap goes out a little bit. You know, it's just too fine of a line to be walking when we're talking about really expensive pickup trucks and a lot of money that you got invested into the vehicle. So, so I thought maybe that was going to be an option for 93 guys. It's not, unfortunately. But the good news is that it's a really good option on the E85. So for the price of a pulley swap, roughly 160 bucks or so, this is what we got. Bam! Really cool gains on just dropping one pulley size. So we went from a 3.875 pulley to a 3.75 pulley. That's roughly 1.5 pounds of boost increase. If the weather was a little bit more cooperative today and it wasn't a million degrees, we'd probably see closer to about 2 pounds of boost roughly. But we picked up 30 wheel horsepower, 645 to 675 wheel horsepower, and the peak horsepower actually pushed out a little bit further. That's because as these blowers spin higher in the RPM range, they actually produce a little bit more boost. They're a positive displacement supercharger, meaning that every rotation of the supercharger displaces the same volume of air, which in this case is 3.0 liters of air. So the faster you spin it, the more air it displaces. So we actually see a ramp and increase in boost as the RPM increases. So that's why you actually see the gains here in the lower end are a little bit less. That's because the smaller pulley doesn't make as huge a difference in blower speed when we're down here at the lower RPM range. But as we increase with RPM, you can see that the gains get a little bit larger. And that's really, really impressive. I mean, I think that's really kind of like the go-to pulley if you're going to run E85 and you just want to have like basically stock reliability as if this were stock Whipple kitted everything else. You know, throw E85 in with a fuel system and throw that 3.75 pulley on it, and you got a rocking pickup truck. So now, this is the one everybody's been waiting for. So this is our 3.5 pulley. I'm gonna turn off the 3.75 for now. Okay guys, so through the power of video editing, we had a little technical difficulty getting our max values to display here. So you see that the stock Whipple values are displayed again. That's the only way we could get the DynoJet software to cooperate and show us the 3.5 liter numbers. So that's why it's here. That's why things look a little bit funny. You can also see we had a little bit of an issue with the RPM signal at the top of the pull. However, that did not change any of the numbers that you're seeing here. So nothing to worry about there. Now, 3.5 pulley, really good gains, great power. But if you notice, our gains again are about 30 wheel horsepower, right? So about 30 wheel horsepower, roughly 40 pound-feet of torque or so. Definitely a huge improvement in performance. But now the key point or the takeaway from this is that we dropped one pulley size and we gained 30 horsepower. Then we dropped two pulley sizes. We're running a peak boost of about 14.5 PSI now with this 3.5 pulley, and we gained 30 horsepower again. So let me explain that, right? It is not, unfortunately, a linear increase. Oh, we drop a pulley size, we go 30 horsepower. We drop another pulley size, 30 horsepower. It doesn't work that way, right? How do superchargers work? Well, a supercharger is belt driven, right? And as we know, they're not that efficient. These are incredibly efficient compared to a few years ago. However, we're spinning this with a pulley, with a belt, and that is mechanical force that's needed to drive that supercharger. So the harder that we spin this supercharger, the more parasitic loss that it has, meaning that the harder that we spin it, the more horsepower that it takes or that it robs from the engine for us to be able to make that boost and to make that power. So as we dropped 2 pulley sizes, we only gained 30 horsepower, right? Where we dropped 1 pulley size, we picked up that 30 horsepower. So we got 60 horsepower in total through dropping 3 pulley sizes and increasing boost, roughly 4.5 to 5 PSI. So your gains, we get to the point of diminishing returns the harder we spin the supercharger. Now, that doesn't mean this thing is tapped out. It's definitely not tapped out, right? We all know these superchargers can make well over 1,000 wheel horsepower, but I wanted to illustrate this point because it's important that people know that, hey, sometimes going to that next smaller pulley isn't necessarily worth all the risk that comes along with it, because yeah, you might make a little more power, but you're also exponentially increasing the risk factor. You start leaning on things a little bit harder. You know, that's where stock engines can have issues and we can blow them up, or stock transmissions, or, you know, you always find the weak link. The more power that we make, we find the weak links. So this was a really good example of that. And I thought this was gonna make a little bit more power, but conditions aren't super great right now. As I've mentioned a couple of times, it's really hot. It's pretty humid because it's been raining all day the last few days. So not the greatest conditions for us to do this, but as we mentioned earlier in the video, we're not concerned with the actual power numbers. We're concerned with the gains versus the baselines. So gains versus the baselines, just to finish this up, we'll show you where we started with the stock Whipple tune and where we ended the day. So turn that guy off. Oh, sorry. Turn that off. Turn that off. And here we are. 525 horsepower on 93 octanes where we started with the Whipple tune. We ended up at 706 wheel horsepower. That is a gain of 180 wheel horsepower. So a gain of 180 wheel horsepower. We started at 494 pound-feet of torque. We ended at 597 pound-feet of torque. So a little more than 100 pound-feet of torque. That is impressive. So I'm ready to drive this thing. I think it's gonna be a heck of a lot of fun. So we're gonna get it off the dyno and we're gonna go do some hoodlum stuff. So guys, thanks so much for sticking with us through this. We're gonna have these tunes ready for you guys here on the website real soon. It's gonna be exciting stuff coming in the future. So you guys stay tuned. We're gonna have more cool stuff coming at you real soon, all right? All right guys, so we just got off the dyno and this is the best part of every tuning session. Calibration, validation. So we're gonna go and test drive this thing and see how it drives. First thing I'm going to look for is initial acceleration, drivability, make sure it shifts through the gears nice and clean. Start tipping into the throttle a little bit more. Of course, we're data logging as we're doing this because we always need data. Everything feels great. Pop it into sport mode. Second gear leave here from this light because these 35s traction could be a little limited. So. Here we go. That's a real laugh because that was fun. This thing is a rocket ship. Too much fun. Well, guys, I think that is a calibration validated right there, and truck's driving awesome. A little more. Yeah, feels awesome. Feels great. All right, success. We're gonna have these up for you guys real soon. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you guys enjoy the tunes even more. We'll catch you on the next one. This thing is awesome. This is like the perfect amount of power for a street car. It's definitely enough to get you into trouble, but not so much that this is a precise exercise in throttle control every time that you decide you want to enjoy the power. So yeah, this is it, man. This is the go-to pulley of an E85 3.5. It's a blast, man. So I'm gonna enjoy this truck a little bit more. We'll see you guys next time.